Good evening, everybody. We have I like to believe, a very intellectually broadening evening full of expatiating vivification of gridiron American football pedagogy planned for you. So welcome to yet another fantastic night of the Shared Knowledge series. I have with me two very astute athletic minds. So just let me introduce the starting lineup for tonight's event. We have David Washington, who is a sprint aficionado and founder of SprintFit. His experience spans 40 years, in which he qualified for the 1980 Olympic trials, to being a mastermind in the high school track and field scene, leading his Uniparacera high school track and field team to national acclaim. He won 10 CIF, aka California Interscholastic Federation, titles, in which to this day, his 4x400 meter relay team still holds the second fastest time in U.S. high school history. Today, he coaches NFL greats such as Robert Woods from the Rams, Nico Sharp, and Paul Richardson from the Seahawks. He also extends his expertise to Olympic greats such as snowboarder Shaun White. And our second speaker of the evening, of course, requires no introduction, Rod Woodson, the orchestrator of tonight's event in partnership with the Irish American Football Federation, a legionnaire of gridiron American football, a legend, and Hall of Famer. He is a member of the NFL 100 all-time team, a Super Bowl champ with the Baltimore Ravens, and of course, as aforementioned, a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. However, his greatness does not stop there. He is also the founder, president, and CEO of Hope Through Football, an organization that strives to provide a platform for U.S. and international American football players to hone their skills on and off the field. But before we commence, I would like to give the president of the Irish American Football Federation, Aidan McQuire, the chance to say a few words, sir. So if you will.
Good evening, everybody. I don't know what I'm going to say now after the introductions of the two coaches you're going to be speaking to. I don't have any Arthur Masons, any trophies, anything like that. And I'm just a person who loves football. Been involved with the sport this 2013. I became the president of the association. But one of the main things within Ireland and American Football Ireland is the development of our coaches and the development of our players. And when this opportunity came up to go into partnership with Share the Knowledge and Hope Through Football, it was a no-brainer for myself, for the board, for Coach Kieran O'Sullivan, to go into partnership with this. The development of our coaches and players is paramount. We are slightly isolated where we are with being an island, but hopefully, and I thoroughly believe that this partnership that we have gone into will benefit every single coach and every single player that we have within our association. We're looking forward to making new friends, going into new friends around Europe, new friends around the world. And I cannot thank all the coaches involved for putting this together. And we look forward to a successful partnership long into the future with both Share the Knowledge and Hope Through Football. So, Morris, I'll hand it back over to yourself and we get the show on the road.
Well, thank you, sir. So without further ado, Coach Washington and Coach Woodson, the floor is all yours.
I met David Washington in 1987 when I was running track. We ran at the same track over and over and over at Santa Monica Junior College when I was running with Chuck Beavis and his group. And he is an outstanding individual who cares about the kids and gives back to the kids. And Maurice, you talked about his accolades as a coach, but better than that, he's a good human being that he wants to see kids succeed. And that's one of the main reasons he's with us here today. So without further ado, David Washington, it's all yours.
Hi, good evening, coaches. It's my pleasure to be here. As Rod stated, one of the biggest things that I enjoy, especially as I'm getting older, is giving back and working with youth. I wouldn't have done half the things that I've done without help of people before me, helping me, giving me a leg up, and just enlightening me and showing me the way. So at least where I am now, the least I can do is try and give back and help those and spread whatever knowledge I have to those coming up. So without further ado, I'm going to get into my presentation, which is about speed. That's what I'm here for. And whatever questions you have, hopefully I can answer. And I'm going to share my screen with you. We can get started. All right, can everybody see that screen?
Yes, sir.
All right, so we're here with Hope Through Football. We're going to talk about speed. So in the game of football and athletics, period, why is speed so important? A couple of things. One, everybody wants it. Whether you're a coach, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a parent, everybody wants their kid or that athlete to have speed, okay? Why is speed important? Speed is the unequalizer. It's where at the end of a game, beginning of a game, you can excite the crowd, you can excite your teammates. Is that one thing that if you have a good wide receiver who's fast or a defensive end who is fast, who can rush quickly, who a defensive back who can close quickly. Speed is that one thing that we all want to see, we all want to be a part of. 3, it gives an athlete and a coach confidence. You know you have that one element that can surprise people, that can open the game up, that can close a game. So speed helps create athletic weapons on both sides of the ball, okay? What is speed and how do we get it? So let me break it down initially with the definition of speed. According to the dictionary, speed is distance traveled per unit of time. Simply put, how fast an object is moving. And in our world, we're looking at how fast can a person move? How fast can you move? So when I talk about speed, when I talk to my athletes and I begin to train them, I break it down like this. Speed in athletics is your stride frequency plus your gait or your stride length. So meaning that how fast can you move your legs up and down and how wide can your stride go? You put those two combinations together and you get what we call speed in the world of athletics, okay? Speed is also a combination of flexibility, strength, and power. If your hips are tight, if your hamstrings are tight, you don't have the flexibility, you're not gonna be able to open your gait up as wide as you should be able to. If you don't have the strength to sustain that or the power, then the flexibility doesn't mean anything. You have to have all three of combination together in order to quote unquote run fast, okay? So there's a difference in strength and power. So strength refers to the ability to overcome resistance, while power refers to the ability to overcome resistance in the shortest period of time. Okay, strength is something like if you're on a bench and you're on a bench press and you have 245s on each side, can you move that weight? That's talking about just pure strength. Okay, power comes from if you're a lineman and you're going up against a defensive lineman and the ball is hiked and you come off the ball and you have to get that defensive lineman out of the way. That's power. How fast can I move this big object in front of me out of this hole? So that's going to be power. So in terms of looking at football, okay? So these are some images I put together, and I'll show this to you a little bit later on, but these are all prominent sprinters, athletics, football players. We have Usain Bolt, Tariq, we have Rob when he was in college, and we have Robert Woods of number 17. And I put a picture of Robert in the middle because when I was coaching him in high school, he was already showing signs of athletic prowess that I knew he was going to make it to the pros. So if you look at all these different athletes in these images, the form is all very similar. So they're all, what I'll get into later, they're all dorsiflexing, all using their arm, their power level levers, which I'll get into later on also. but they all share those similar traits of what a sprinter on the football field or a sprinter looks like. Okay, so I like to bring physics and science into when I'm coaching my athletes. Today's athletes are smart, and the way I explain things to them, the smarter they are and the more knowledge they have, the easier it is for them to turn that knowledge into a physical attribute. So kids today, you know, if they don't know something, they're gonna look it up on YouTube. They're gonna look it up on Google. So I'd rather them get it from me and understand, you know, the right things as opposed to going to YouTube and say, hey, coach, I saw this new drill. I saw this on YouTube and somebody said do this, somebody said do that, which at times can be good, but at a lot of times you have people who kind of halfway know what they're doing, but they want to get the name out there and they put things on YouTube, and it's not always the best information. So when I talk about running and I talk about speed, it's easy to break it down to Newton's laws of physics. Okay, so Newton's second law is a force when a force of an object is equal to its mass times acceleration. So F equals m times a. So if you're looking at this image, you have the defensive guy tackling the offensive guy. So the defensive player is from the Seahawks is coming in with much more force, and that force is his mass with an acceleration hitting the wide receiver. So if he's coming in at a much faster rate with his body weight behind him than the receiver is, then he's going to tackle him. That's simply put, that's going to be a force times mass. Force equals your mass times acceleration. Okay. The other thing I share with my athletes when I'm on the field or on the track with them is Newton's third law. And this is so important for young sprinters or athletes to understand. Okay. So for every action in nature, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So as athletes are running, most of the time coaches are telling the athlete, get your knees up, get your knees up. But what they should be telling them is, as your knees come up, apply power and force down so you can run faster. So if I have a tennis ball, and this is the easiest way I get my athletes to understand what I'm talking about. I have a tennis ball and I drop the tennis ball. It's going to bounce back up. That's just simple, right? It's going to bounce back up. But if I take that ball and I throw it down hard, it's going to come back up much quicker and much faster with more force than if I just drop it. So your legs are the same way. If you are forcing that leg down using your glutes and using your hamstrings, you're forcing that leg down into the ground, you're going to get much more force coming back up, which means that that leg is going to come up faster and your stride length is going to be stretched out a little bit more if you apply more force to it. So laws of physics come into sprinting much more than what people give you credit for. Okay, people, like I said, we're always saying, you know, get your knees up, get your knees up. Versus what we should be saying is, as you're running, make sure you're applying pressure and applying power into the ground. You're not stomping, but you're applying power into the ground to get more force out of it. Okay, so if we look at these two images, picture on the left, Usain Bolt. The power that he's applying is almost like driving a nail with a hammer into the ground. As his leg is coming down, it's going to, that leg as it straightens out, is like that nail going into the turf, into the track, and it's going to, but that force is going to come back out much faster. Okay. So the picture on the right is just a bunch of numbers that explain what I'm talking about. The more force you apply into a surface, the more you're going to get back out of it. So our turfs, that's why people started going to turf more than grass, and tracks over the years have gone from asphalt tracks to, you know, to your rubberized turf, which you're running on nowadays. They give back more than they take in. Okay, so a turf is going to be faster than grass because the surface is designed to give more force back out than it is to absorb. Grass is going to absorb more than a turf will. So your athletes in the game is going to be faster on turf than on grass. Okay, so here's a chart where I talk about the muscles that are used in sprinting. And this I always explain to my athletes because, like I said, the more knowledge they have, the more they can apply that to themselves and become better athletes. So we are broken down into your posterior and anterior. So our anterior, obviously, is the front of your body. The posterior is the back of the body. And then I broke those down into your legs and upper body. So the muscles in our legs that we use are your hip flexors. These are the muscles that are at the very top of your hip on the outside. And they help drive the knee up, pull the knee up. You have your quads, your quadriceps. You have your what's called the Vastus Medialis. This is that little teardrop muscle just on the where your quad and your knee come together, kind of like on the inside. It's like a teardrop. It's called your Vastus Medialis. And then you have your tibialis anterior. That's the muscle along the shin. Okay. And in the upper body, you have your anterior deltoids, the front of the shoulder, your pectoral major, which is your chest, which is broken down into two muscles. Your pectoralis major and minor. Minor is a layer of muscle underneath the chest. And then you have your abs. Extremely important, or your core. If your core isn't strong, I'll show that to you a little bit later on, then that has a total effect on how you run and how you perform. Okay, your posterior, or the back side of your legs, you have your gluteus medius and maximus, which is your butt. Simply put, is your butt. Then you have your hamstrings and your calves. Okay, these are the muscles in the back of the leg. And your upper body, you have your rear delts, you have your trapezoids, and you have your latissimus dorsi. These are the muscles that in the back of on your back that help you run. And I'll explain all of that. Okay, so when we talk about strength and flexibility, in this image we have your hip flexors, which is the yellow here in the front of the top of your hip. That's your hip flexors. Okay, if these become tight, then that means that you can't pull up straight. It's going to force you to lean forward. So if these are tight, then your glutes are going to be weak. Okay, so it doesn't enable your glutes to really flex the way they should. So tight hip flexors, weak glutes, a tight back, weak abdominals, all of these things need to be strengthened and equalized in order for an athlete to perform well and run fast. If your back is tight, then that means that you're not going to be able to get your knees up because your abs are weak, okay? So if your glutes are weak, then you're not going to be able to sustain or be able to use the power that your hamstrings are enabling you to do to achieve. So there has to be an equal balance in the front and the back and the top and the bottom of your body in order for everything to work well. So a lot of times in the weight room, young athletes make the mistake of, I got to get big, I got to lift, I got to do a lot of chest presses, I got to lift a lot and hit the bench. And they focus on the front of the body and they don't worry about the back of the body. They don't work on their shoulders. They don't work on their upper back. They don't work on their lats. Or if they're just doing squats, they forget about their hip flexors and they don't do drills to work on their hip flexors. So if your glutes are strong because you're doing a lot of squats, but you have tight or weak hip flexors, you're going to pull something. So everything has to be equalized in the front of the body or your posterior or your anterior and the back of the body or your posterior. Also, again, you have to have an equal amount of strength in the upper body and the lower body. Everything works, you're a machine. You have to work together as a unit. When we run, our foot goes into what we call dorsiflexion. The image I showed you earlier on by the athletes, they're all beginning to dorsiflex. And dorsiflex means that when you run, your toe is being pulled up towards your knee, okay? What that does is it enables we all have cleats, or if you're on the field, you have cleats on the bottom. If you run track, you have spikes underneath. And what that enables your body to do is to grab the turf underneath you and pull the body forward. So if you plan to flex, which is just the opposite, if the toe is pointing down, then all that power that you have and your running cycle is shortened, and your power is being driven into the ground, but you don't get anything back. So when you run, or when you teach your athletes to run, make sure that their foot is dorsiflexion. As soon as their foot comes off the ground, it should naturally be pulled. The toe should be pulled towards the knee. And what that also does is your hamstring and Achilles are, so your Achilles it starts here at the heel and it wraps up towards your calf. If that tightens up as you dorsiflex, it's like a rubber band. So when your foot comes down to the ground, it automatically pushes down and enables you to have a little bit of extra spring to push off the ground. So it's kind of like, it's like a rubber band. So, and then on the right-hand side, what I call the power lever, it's the part here, as your shoulder is driven back, this elbow drives back, which enables this knee. Everything works in tandem. So if this elbow is being driven back, then the knee on the same side is driven up, okay? So the more flexibility and power you have as in that shoulder, the arm goes back, being forced back by your rear deltoid, the easier it is to enable your knee to come up, okay? So here are some things that I pointed out that young athletes have the habit of doing, which can complicate or inhibit your running style. So overstriding is a common cause. So most young athletes think in order to run fast, I really got to stretch my stride out. But if you overstride, then what happens is, in this image right here, this bottom image, it's called heel striking. So if you draw a line straight down through your body, typically when you run, or when a sprinter or a football player is running at their top end speed, your foot should be coming down directly underneath of your hips. So if you overstride, then you're really putting on the brakes and you're stopping yourself. All that power you have going forward is being caught by the heel and driven into the ground and being absorbed by your knee, by your shin. That's why a lot of times young athletes will have shin splints. So if you overstride, this middle here in the section in the middle is explaining you're going to get plantar loads. Your plantar is that stretch of tendon from the ball of the foot down to your heel. So you're going to get a stress load on your plantar. Plantar fasciitis is typically what it's called. And it's extremely painful and it takes a while for it to heal because it's a tendon. Your knees take a lot of the brunt. Knees aren't designed when they're straight to be taking that much of a load. You have hip adduction, you have an ITB strain, which is ITB is that tendon that goes from the hip down to the knee on the outside. Vertical oscillation, which means that your lower back is going to start pulling back and you start having lower back pains. Your hamstrings take a lot of the force. So if you run incorrectly and you don't have the proper mechanics, you invite a lot of injuries into your body. So for young athletes, it's extremely important for them to learn how to run initially than to run fast. If they run properly, have the right mechanics, they're going to start running faster. And part of what I do is to make sure that when I get these athletes, and not even young athletes, a lot of times I'll have older athletes who are getting ready for the combine, or they've been playing for a couple of years and they decide, I need to get a step faster because I got a new contract coming up. What can I do? And I look at their mechanics and I break it down and get them to run the right way. If their arms are doing the wrong thing, if they're not using their core when they run, all these little things have a huge effect on how fast an athlete can be. Question of the day is, can speed be taught? This is a huge question that people go back and forth with. People say either you're born fast or you're not. I say that speed can be taught, and I know that's kind of a loaded thing. So, in other words, you can't take a lineman and make him as fast as Usain Bolt. That's not going to happen. Physically, it's not going to happen. But you can take a lineman and can we add 2/10, 3/10 of a second? Yes, because simply mechanics. If you get them to understand the mechanics of sprinting, what muscles that they haven't approached and worked on in the weight room to help them balance themselves out, all these little things make a huge difference. So guys that are going to the combine, it makes a big difference if a lineman runs a 5.1 versus a 4.9. If you have a receiver who runs a 4.5 versus a 4.3, those 0.2 of a second make a huge difference on the field and in their contract. And even if a good example I talk about is if you have a guy who runs, let's say, a 4.38, another guy who runs a 4.4, they're both fast. But in typical conversation, that 4.38, somehow that 8 gets dropped off. And guys start saying, well, coaches start saying, this guy ran a 4.3, and this other guy ran a 4.4, 4.5. And in the blink of an eye, it's not that fast. But when it comes to numbers and the people's minds and how they think, a 4.4, a 4.3 is definitely faster than a 4.5. So those few tenths of a second make a huge difference. If you're a quarterback and you have a defensive end crashing in on you, those few tenths of a second make a big difference in being able to step out of his way or to run up the field, especially the way they're playing football nowadays. A Patrick Mahomes and a Lamar Odoms. Quarterbacks now are looked at as not just staying in the pocket, but they have to be mobile. They have to be able to sprint. Your tally for defensive ends or tackles who can put up numbers as far as getting at the quarterback. Their speed is becoming much more important than it used to be. The game is becoming faster. Speed is playing a much more significant position in football than it used to. So speed is an extremely, extremely important aspect of the game. And I go back to this first image I showed you. So if we look at all these images, all these guys are dorsiflexing, even though they're not on the track, on the field. And dorsiflexing means this: his toes being pulled up to his knee. Down here, same thing. Toes being pulled up to the knee as he's beginning to run. Tariq is doing it over here. Rob is doing it here. So they all have this elbow being driven back. There's your power level lever, okay? So they're all beginning to drive that elbow back as they run. So all these little aspects and techniques that make an athlete fast, all of these guys share that. And they're all considered, one of the best in their position in the game. I told Rod I would keep this under 30 minutes, 35 minutes, and I think I've done that. If we have any questions, I'm definitely open to sharing those now. And I am done with my portion.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Very interesting. Thanks a lot. Gary Marshall, you're up. You raised your hand, sir.
Hi, Coach. Like you, I believe you can just about train any aspect of your speed, but I also believe that you are locked in with your muscle enzyme profile in either being a fast twitch athlete or a slow twitch athlete or anything in between. Given that some of our athletes can only train a couple of times a week, where do you think they should put their priorities? Should it be diet? Should it be gym? Should it be getting the correct footwear? What's the best way for our guys to get that extra couple of tenths?
I would say diet and gym. Gym first and diet. I mean, because if you can be in the gym all day, but if you're not eating the right way and you're gaining weight, but it's not being trained the right way or with the strength and power that goes along with that, then it's all for naught. So obviously doing the right exercises in the gym, but also eating the correct way. And your diet. So a lot of times what I tell athletes is I give them a scenario of if you make it to the pros or wherever you are, and you buy your cars, okay? So you have two cars. You have your weekend car. Let's just say it's a Ferrari, a high-end car, or a Porsche. And then you have your car you go to the grocery store in, okay? Simple car. You're going to treat those cars totally different. When you're going to put regular gas in, you can take it to the dealer every now and then when you need to tune up, versus your high-end car, you're going to make sure you put good gas in. You're going to make sure it gets tuned up. Every time you take it out, you're going to baby it. So treat your body, and they should be treating their body like it is a Ferrari. They're going to put the right kind of foods in it to get the most out of it. You know, they're going to take their time and make sure it's strong in the right places and flexible in the right places. So yes, you want to have a good combination. If you only have a little bit of time, of making sure that you make the most out of the weight room, but at the same time, you make the most out of what you're putting into your body. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Let's head it over to Yoga A12. Yoga A12.
Hi, I'm Yoga A12. This is Steve from Scotland. I've seen, Coach, thanks for that. I was impressed by how you segued neatly from football to physics to anatomy and back again. That was a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you.
I'm an ex-sports science major, so I love all of that stuff. But I've also seen firsthand the benefits of a speed coach on football players. And it's huge. And it can turn a guy who's a prospect into a leading football player, no matter which level. And the thing is, in most of the non-US world, we have a problem with getting coaches per position, never mind a specialist speed coach. So do you have any specific drills or coaching points that we can look at? You talk about dorsiflexion being a key component of building speed into our football athletes. Do you have any drills that we can look at and things that we can, as amateur speed coaches, look at with the players? And we all do the form running drills from the 1950s or whatever during our practice, but what can we do as football coaches that will help us point out?
I have a list of exercises or drills that the guys can do. And if you're limited with equipment, so just say guys can't make it to a weight room, don't have access to a weight room and weights, there are a lot of things you can do at home. What I can do is make available a list and some short videos of some of the things I have my guys do. I simply have them buy some bands that are pretty inexpensive, and hip flexor drills and glute drills can be done with bands. You can do a lot of single leg exercises, single leg squats. You can put hold a kettlebell in the front and do a single leg squat, which is going to help strengthen the glutes and the hamstrings. As you come up, make sure that they're positioned so that their glute and the hamstrings are pushing that muscle up, pushing the weight up versus leaning forward on that quad. Most people don't think about or realize that the majority of sports are done on one leg. So a lot of single leg stuff can be done that's going to help strengthen or help their bodies prepare themselves for running or for sprinting. A lot of band work can be done for the shoulders that will help develop your rear and front delts. So I can put together a list of and somehow get it to you guys that will help.
Awesome.
Okay.
Hey David.
Yes.
Can you remember the old video you had with different examples of you doing different weights for the speed development?
Yeah, I can make that slide available to them.
Yeah, just share that to me or share it to Coach Turek, and then he can get it over to.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Coach. Much appreciated. Gentlemen, we have to move on. However, don't worry, you'll get to ask a question during our Q&A bit. We just have to get the ball rolling. We got a lot of Coach Washington. People want to ask questions. So just hold on to your question, and we will get to you after Mr. Coach Woodson's presentation as well. Thanks a lot, Coach Washington. Much appreciated. Coach Washington, if you're ready to go, sir, then you're the next man on the floor.
Coach Woodson.
Coach Woodson. That's okay, Maurice.
Sorry, I know. It's my speech impediment, Coach.
No,
I tend to speak weirdly.
we look alike because of my flowy hair, and he has a lot of flowy hair too. So we kind of.
Yeah, true. It's hard to keep them apart. It's hard to keep you guys apart.
Hey, but let me say this real quick about speed. The game of football is played in inches. And the more you can do to close that space down, and if you're a bit offensive lineman, like I call the big sexies, right? Offensive defensive linemen, those guys pulling and getting from point A to point B faster helps your cause as a player. And the more you can do athletically to close those inches as an athlete, be it whatever position, the more you can have success. So I think speed goes across the board. Also we can share, Coach David has a speed workout that we can give out to you guys, and you can do that anywhere. So we'll also make that available for you guys. All right. Let me get to my information. All right, we're going to talk about defensive back play. And before I get to that, I just want to say that, defensive backs nowadays are played in space. Everything's played in space. So the more you can move your feet, stay on top of the receivers, the better opportunity you have. And there in Ireland, you guys play what we have our college rules, our high school rules. So there's more you can do to collision guys down the field comparable to a defensive back in the National Football League. So I'm going to share my screen. You guys see that?
Yes, sir.